Korak stood tall among the diplomats gathered in Stellar Alliance Station 7's Grand Reception Hall. His green-tinged exoskeleton gleamed under the soft lights as he surveyed the room with 4 yellow eyes. At nearly 8 feet tall, the Zentari warrior towered over most species present, especially the humans. This was the first official diplomatic meeting between Zentari and humans. Korax had studied reports about these soft-skinned, fragile creatures who somehow managed to join the Stellar Alliance despite their obvious physical shortcomings. Without protective exoskeletons, significant muscle mass, or natural weapons, humans seemed like an evolutionary mistake to most Zentari scientists. Yet here they were, playing at diplomacy as if they deserved a seat at the table with superior species. Ambassador Korax, may I introduce Jack Miller, one of our diplomatic representatives. The human female speaking was Diana Lewis, the lead human ambassador. She stood beside a male human of utterly unremarkable appearance. Korax lowered his head in what humans called a nod, a gesture his neck joints found uncomfortable. Representative Miller, he said, his translator converting his clicking speech into human English. Jack Miller smiled and extended his hand. Another odd human custom Korax had been briefed on. He carefully took the small, soft hand in his armored claw, applying minimal pressure to avoid crushing the fragile bones. "It's an honor to meet you, Ambassador," said Jack. "I've been studying Zentari culture extensively. Your people's achievements in biological engineering are particularly impressive." Korax felt a surge of pride. At least this human recognized Zentari superiority. "Yes, we have optimized our evolution for over 12 generations. Our exoskeletons can withstand pressures that would crush your species instantly." Jack's smile didn't waver. "Fascinating. Yet adaptability has its advantages too. Would you care for a drink? Or perhaps a game of strategic thinking?" "I understand. The Zentari excel at spatial reasoning." Something in the human's tone bothered Korax. Was there a challenge hidden in those words? A game would be acceptable. Zentari tactical thinking is unmatched in the quadrant. Soon they were seated at a holographic game table. Diana Lewis and several other diplomats gathered to watch. The game, called Stellar Conquest, was a common diplomatic activity. Simple enough to learn quickly but complex enough to reveal strategic thinking patterns. As they played, Korax grew increasingly frustrated. The human made moves that seemed illogical, even foolish. Yet somehow these moves created unexpected advantages later. After 42 minutes, Jack executed a series of maneuvers that left Korax's position indefensible. "I believe that's game," Jack said quietly. Korax stared at the board in disbelief. Around them, several diplomats from other species made sounds of appreciation. A Vorian diplomat even laughed, a bubbling sound that grated on Korax's auditory receptors. "You were fortunate," Korax said, his translator struggling to keep the anger from his voice. Jack shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe different evolutionary paths lead to different ways of thinking. Would you like another game? I'd be interested to see how you adapt your strategy." The word adapt felt like a deliberate provocation. Zentari did not need to adapt. They had engineered themselves to perfection. It was other species who needed to adapt to survive. "Your victory was meaningless," Korax said, rising to his full height. "A simple game cannot measure the worth of a species. In real combat, physical superiority determines the outcome." The room grew quiet. Diana Lewis stepped forward, her expression concerned. "Ambassador Korax, we're here for peaceful diplomatic exchange. Discussions of combat aren't relevant to our talks." But Korax had endured enough. The laughter of the other diplomats, the calm confidence of this physically inferior human, it was an insult to everything the Zentari stood for. "I challenge you, Jack Miller, to Zentari combat trial," he announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent reception hall. "Unless humans are afraid to face superior opponents in physical contest." Diana Lewis's face paled. "Ambassador, humans don't settle diplomatic disagreements through combat. This is completely inappropriate for—" "I accept," Jack interrupted. Diana turned to him, clearly shocked. "Jack, you can't possibly—" It's important to respect cultural differences, Ambassador Lewis, Jack said calmly. The Centauri place high value on physical contests of skill. Refusing would be deeply offensive. Corax felt a surge of satisfaction. Soon he would put this human in his proper place. Tomorrow, in your training facility, submission or incapacitation will determine the victor. No weapons, no armor beyond what nature provided us. Jack nodded. Agreed. Though I hope this contest will foster mutual understanding rather than division. As the reception broke into clusters of concerned conversation, Corax returned to his quarters. He accessed the station's database for information about human physiology. The data confirmed what he already knew. Human skin tore easily, their bones broke under moderate pressure, and they lacked any natural weapons or armor. Their muscle density was laughable compared to Centauri standards. Tomorrow would restore the natural order. The humans' defeat would remind everyone of Centauri superiority and erase the embarrassment of the game loss. The next morning, Corax visited the station's observation deck. Through the massive viewports, he could see the blue-green planet the humans called Earth. Such a soft world, moderate gravity, breathable atmosphere, abundant water. No wonder its dominant species had evolved to be so weak. Later, he spotted Jack Miller in the station's exercise facility. The human was merely stretching and performing light movements, not even preparing for combat. This confirmed Corax's belief that humans were not serious warriors. As the scheduled time approached, Corax performed his pre-combat rituals. He flexed his exoskeleton plates, causing them to crack and resettle for maximum mobility. He practiced striking movements designed to incapacitate without killing. He was a diplomat, after all, not a war leader. When he entered the training facility, he found it crowded with observers. Representatives from 12 different species lined the walls. In the center was a circular area cleared for the combat. Diana Lewis approached him with a stern expression. Ambassador Corax, I must formally protest this event. This is not how humans conduct diplomacy. Yet your representative accepted the challenge, Corax replied. Is he not a true representative of your species? Diana's lips thinned. Jack makes his own choices, but this contest will not affect our diplomatic standings regardless of outcome. Corax clicked his mandibles in amusement. We shall see. Jack Miller entered from the opposite side. He wore simple exercise clothing that did nothing to protect his soft body. He looked calm, almost relaxed. The station's security chief, a neutral Arcturian, explained the rules. No lethal strikes. Combat continues until submission or inability to continue. Medical staff standing by. As they faced each other in the center of the room, Corax felt confident. This would be quick. May the best being win, Jack said quietly. Corax didn't reply. He didn't need words now. Physical reality would speak for itself. The Arcturian signaled the start of combat, and Corax charged. Corax charged forward with frightening speed. His massive frame moved with surprising grace as he aimed a powerful strike at Jack's chest. The blow would not kill, but it would certainly end the fight immediately. But Jack was not there when the strike landed. The human had stepped aside at the last possible moment, moving just enough to avoid contact. Corax's momentum carried him forward, his balance momentarily compromised. Jack made no attempt to counterattack. He simply reset his stance and watched. The Centauri with careful eyes. Corax turned, his 4 yellow eyes narrowing. Stand and fight, human. I am fighting, Jack replied calmly. Just not the way you expect. This time, Corax advanced more carefully. He threw a series of quick strikes aimed at different parts of Jack's body. The human dodged most but took a glancing blow to his shoulder. The impact spun him halfway around, and several observers gasped, yet Jack recovered quickly, rolling with the force rather than resisting it. He used the momentum to create distance between himself and the Centauri. Diana Lewis watched from the sidelines, her face tight with concern. Beside her stood Sam Wright, her aide who had once served in Earth's defense forces. He's going to get killed, Diana whispered. Sam shook his head slightly. Watch his footwork, Jack knows what he's doing. In the combat area, Korax pressed his advantage. He had landed a hit. The human must be injured. But as he moved forward, Jack suddenly changed tactics. Instead of backing away, he stepped into Korax's space. Before the Zentari could react, Jack had grabbed one of his arms, using the alien's own momentum and weight against him. With a twist and pull that seemed to defy physics, Jack sent the much larger Korax tumbling to the floor. A shocked murmur ran through the watching crowd. No one had expected the human to throw the Zentari. Korax got to his feet quickly, his exoskeleton clicking with tension. This was impossible. The human should not have the strength to move him, let alone throw him down. Luck, he growled. Nothing more. Jack did not respond. He had resumed his ready stance, breathing steady and controlled. Furious now, Korax attacked. With less strategy and more power. His strikes came faster, harder. Jack avoided some but was hit by others. A blow to his ribs made him gasp. Another caught his arm, leaving an instant bruise. Yet the human remained standing. More baffling to Korax, Jack seemed to be studying him, learning with each exchange. When Korax used a particular combination of strikes for the second time, Jack was ready. He slipped inside Korax's guard and delivered several quick strikes to points where the exoskeleton segments joined together. Pain flared in those vulnerable areas. Not serious damage, but definite pain. How did the human know where to strike? The fight continued for 10 minutes, then 15. Korax had never expected it to last so long. Zentari were built for explosive power, not extended combat. He was beginning to feel fatigue, while the human, despite visible bruises forming, seemed to maintain the same energy level. "Your endurance is impressive," Korax admitted during a brief pause as they circled each other. "But you cannot win. You have no natural weapons, no armor." Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. "We evolved differently. Humans don't have claws or exoskeletons because we developed different survival strategies." "What strategy involves being soft and easily damaged?" Korax scoffed, launching another attack. This time when Jack evaded, he spoke between movements. "Persistence hunting. On Earth, early humans would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Not the strongest hunters, but the most enduring." Korax didn't understand. What did ancient hunting have to do with combat? He pressed forward, determined to end this ridiculous contest. But 20 minutes into the fight, Korax felt something unfamiliar, genuine tiredness. His movements were slowing. The quick strikes that had nearly caught the human earlier were now easily avoided. Jack, despite taking several hits, was still moving well. His breathing remained controlled. When he spoke, his voice wasn't strained. "Your species evolved for short, decisive conflicts," Jack said. "Explosive power. Overwhelming force, effective against most opponents." Korax tried to reply but found he needed his breath for fighting. The human continued talking as they moved around the combat area. "Humans evolved for adaptability. We can't match your strength or natural armor, but we can observe, learn, and outlast." The observers were completely silent now, watching in disbelief as the fight approached the 30-minute mark. Korax's exoskeleton was designed to conserve energy through efficient movement, but even these biological advantages had limits. His strikes became wilder, less coordinated. Jack, seeing an opportunity, finally changed from defense to offense. He moved inside Korax's increasingly sluggish attacks and delivered precisely targeted strikes to the joint areas he had identified. Earlier, pain flared across Korax's body, not from any single devastating blow, but from the accumulation of many small impacts to the same vulnerable areas. The human was systematically wearing him down. In desperation, Korax committed fully to a powerful overhead strike, putting his remaining energy into one finishing move. It would have shattered bone if it had landed. But Jack sidestepped again, and this time he grabbed Korax's overextended arm. With precise technique, he twisted and pulled, using the Zentari's own weight and momentum. Korax felt his balance fail, completely as he was thrown forward. He crashed to the floor harder than before. Before he could recover, the human was behind him, applying pressure to a joint where his arm connected to his shoulder. It was a spot where the exoskeleton had to be flexible, leaving the underlying tissues less protected. The pain was immediate and intense. Korax tried to stand but found he couldn't move without causing excruciating pain in the joint. The human had him completely immobilized using leverage and precise anatomical knowledge. "Submit," Jack said quietly. "I don't want to cause permanent damage." Around them, the crowd was completely silent in shock. A human had just systematically defeated a Zentari warrior in physical combat. Korax tried once more to break free, but found the pain unbearable. His energy reserves were depleted. The unthinkable had happened. "I submit," he managed to say. Jack immediately released the pressure and stepped back, offering a hand to help Korax up. The Zentari ignored it, struggling to his feet alone, his arm hanging awkwardly. The Arcturian official formally declared Jack the winner. The human bowed respectfully to Korax, who could only stare in confusion and pain. As medical staff approached to examine his injured joint, Korax's worldview crumbled around him. Everything he had believed about humans, about his own species' superiority, had just been proven wrong in front of representatives from across the galaxy. The last thing he saw before being taken to the medical bay was Diana Lewis shaking her head at Jack while Sam Wright stood nearby with a knowing smile. Korax woke up in the station's medical bay. The bright lights made him blink his 4 eyes rapidly. Pain throbbed in his shoulder joint and several other places across his body. He tried to sit up, but felt a gentle pressure on his chest. "Please, don't move yet, Ambassador," said a calm voice. "Your shoulder joint needs time to heal." Korax focused on the speaker. It was a human male wearing the blue uniform of the station's medical staff. His name badge read, Dr. Alan Shepard. "How badly? Am I damaged?" Korax asked, his translator making his clicking speech understandable. Dr. Shepard looked at a glowing screen beside the medical bed. "You have a dislocated shoulder joint, 3 minor fractures in your exoskeleton, and significant muscle strain. Nothing permanent. You should recover fully with proper rest." Korax stared at the ceiling. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the pain of his shattered pride. He had been defeated by a human. A human, the smallest, weakest, softest species in the Stellar Alliance. "How?" he finally asked. "How what?" Dr. Shepard replied. "How did he defeat me? Humans are physically inferior in every measurable way." The doctor smiled slightly as he adjusted something on the medical equipment. "We've learned to work with what we have. Our bodies might seem fragile compared to Zentari, but we've developed techniques that use leverage, momentum, and precision rather than raw strength. But the endurance," Korax said, remembering how Jack had remained fresh while he grew tired. "Your species should not have such stamina." "Actually, endurance is one of our evolutionary advantages," Dr. Shepard explained. "Early humans were persistence. Hunters. They would chase prey for hours or even days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Our bodies evolved efficient cooling systems. We sweat to regulate temperature, and efficient oxygen use during prolonged activity." Korax tried to process this information. It contradicted everything he had been taught about humans. The door to the medical bay slid open and Ambassador Diana Lewis entered. "How is our patient, doctor?" she asked. "Recovering well," Dr. Shepard replied. "He'll need to rest that shoulder for at least 3 days." Diana nodded and approached Korax's bed. "Ambassador, I want to apologize for yesterday's incident. That's not how humans typically conduct diplomacy." Korax clicked his mandibles in what humans would recognize as a bitter laugh. "You apologize for winning? Strange creatures, you humans. We don't see combat as the way to establish diplomatic relationships," Diana explained. "Jack accepted your challenge out of respect for your culture, not to embarrass you." Before Korax could respond, the door opened again. This time, it was Sam Wright, Diana's aide. He carried a small electronic device. "Ambassador Korax," Sam said with a polite nod. "I thought you might be interested in some information about human history and physiology. It might help explain yesterday's outcome." Diana looked surprised but didn't object as Sam activated the device. A holographic display appeared above it, showing images of humans from throughout their history. Our bodies may seem weak compared to yours, Sam said, but they're remarkably adaptable. The images changed to show humans in extremely different environments: freezing Arctic regions, scorching deserts, high mountains, and deep underwater with simple breathing equipment. We can survive in more varied conditions than almost any other species in the Alliance, Sam continued, and our combat techniques developed to take advantage of our specific physical traits. The display shifted to show human warfare through the ages, from ancient battles to modern combat training. Korax watched with growing interest as smaller human fighters defeated larger opponents using technique rather than strength. Human Jack Miller was a champion wrestler before becoming a diplomat, Sam explained. He studied your physiology extensively before your delegation arrived. He knew my weaknesses, Korax said, understanding dawning. The joint connections in my exoskeleton, Sam nodded. Just as you studied human weaknesses. The difference is, he adapted his strategy to exploit your weaknesses while working around his own. Korax sank back into the medical bed, his mind racing. The Zentari had always believed their engineered evolution made them superior. They had modified their bodies over generations to be stronger, more armored, more physically imposing. But they had never considered that there might be different types of advantages. Our delegation is very confused, Korax admitted. They expected me to easily defeat any human in physical combat. Our entire understanding of your species may be flawed. Perhaps this is an opportunity for both our species to learn more about each other, Diana suggested. Physical strength isn't the only measure of a species' capabilities. Korax was silent for a long moment. The Zentari have focused so much on physical optimization that we may have overlooked other forms of advancement. Later that day, after Diana and Sam had left, Korax received another visitor. It was Jack Miller. The human had several visible bruises on his face and arms, but moved without apparent pain or difficulty. "Ambassador Korax," Jack said with a respectful nod. "I hope you're recovering well." Korax studied the human with new eyes. Jack looked so physically unimpressive. No natural armor, no claws, no significant muscle mass compared to a Zentari. Yet he had won their combat through intelligence, endurance, and technique. "You knew where to strike," Korax said. "The weak points in my exoskeleton." Jack nodded. "I studied Zentari physiology. Just as I'm sure you studied human weaknesses." "I did," Korax admitted. "But I failed to understand human strengths." "That's often the case when different species meet," Jack said. "We tend to focus on obvious physical differences rather than looking deeper." "Why did you accept my challenge?" Korax asked. "Your ambassador clearly disapproved." Jack smiled slightly. "I respected your culture enough to meet you on your terms. Combat has significance for Zentari. I thought refusing would cause more diplomatic damage than accepting. You risked serious injury." "I did," Jack agreed, "but I was confident in my abilities and I believed the potential for understanding was worth the risk." Korax found himself respecting this small, soft being. "You fought well. With honor." "As did you," Jack replied. "I hope our next meeting can be over a game rather than in combat." After Jack left, Korax began composing a message to the Zentari High Command. He needed to explain what had happened, but more importantly, he needed to convey his new understanding of humans. They were not the weak, inferior species the Zentari had believed them to be. His report began. "I challenged a human to a fight. I'm writing this from the hospital. We have gravely underestimated these beings." As he wrote, Korax realized that this defeat might ultimately lead to a better understanding between their species. Perhaps that was worth the pain and humiliation. Perhaps that was the true purpose of diplomacy, to challenge assumptions and find unexpected common ground. Even if that common ground turned out to be a combat area where a physically superior being learned a valuable lesson about different forms of strength. 2 days later, Korax was released from the medical bay. His shoulder still hurt when he moved it too quickly, but Dr. Shepard assured him the joint would heal completely with time. The doctor had given him exercises to strengthen the area during recovery. When Korax returned to the Zentari delegation's quarters, he found his fellow diplomats in a state of confusion and concern. His defeat had shaken their confidence. If humans could defeat Zentari in physical combat, what other assumptions about their species might be wrong? "The High Command has received your report," said Vertax, the lead Zentari ambassador. "They are disturbed by your conclusions." Korax stood tall despite his injury. "My conclusions are based on direct experience. Humans are not what we believe them to be." "One unusual human does not represent an entire species," argued Thrix, another diplomat. "Perhaps this Jack Miller is an outlier, genetically enhanced or artificially modified." "He is not," Korax replied firmly. "I have reviewed his medical records with permission from Ambassador Lewis. Jack Miller is physically typical for a human male of his age and background. What makes him different is training and knowledge, not biology." The other Zentari looked uncomfortable. Their species had built their identity around physical superiority. For generations, they had modified their bodies to be stronger, more durable, better suited for combat. The idea that a physically inferior species could defeat them through other means was deeply troubling. "We must learn more," Korax insisted. "If we misunderstood humans so completely, what else have we missed about other Alliance species?" Later that day, Korax was invited to observe a human training session in the station's exercise facility. He sat carefully on a reinforced bench designed for larger species and watched as several humans practiced various physical activities. What struck him most was the variety. Some humans lifted weights to build strength. Others ran on moving platforms for endurance. Some practiced fighting techniques against partners or training devices. Unlike Zentari, who all trained in similar ways to maximize their natural advantages, humans seemed to pursue many different physical specialties. Sam Wright noticed Korax watching and came over to sit beside him. "Interesting, isn't it?" Sam said. "No two humans train exactly the same way." "Why such variety?" Korax asked. "Wouldn't it be more efficient to determine the optimal training method and have everyone follow it?" Sam smiled. "That assumes there is one optimal method. Humans don't believe that. We recognize that different bodies have different strengths and weaknesses. Some of us naturally build muscle more easily. Others have greater endurance. We work with our individual traits rather than trying to force everyone into the same mold." Korax considered this. Zentari culture valued uniformity and standardization. Their biological modifications over generations had been aimed at making all Zentari stronger in the same ways. The idea of embracing individual differences was foreign to them. "Is that why you defeated me?" Korax asked. "Because Jack Miller trained specifically for his individual abilities?" "Partly," Sam replied. "Jack recognized that he couldn't match your strength directly, so he developed techniques that used your strength against you. It's a common human approach. When we can't overpower an obstacle, we find ways around it or use it to our advantage." As they talked, Korax noticed a group of humans practicing a technique where a smaller person repeatedly threw a larger one to the ground. The larger human wasn't resisting. They were cooperating, allowing themselves to be thrown to help their partner practice. "What is the purpose of that exercise?" Korax asked. "They're practicing judo throws," Sam explained. "The core principle is using your opponent's weight and momentum against them. Notice how the smaller human doesn't try to lift the larger one with pure strength? They create imbalance and then direct the larger person's existing momentum." Korax watched with new interest. This was exactly what Jack had done to him during their combat. The human hadn't tried to match Korax's strength, he had redirected it. "May I speak with them?" Korax asked. Sam led him over to the humans, who paused their practice when they saw the Zentari approaching. They looked nervous, but Sam quickly introduced Korax and explained his interest. "Would you demonstrate the technique again?" Korax asked. "I wish to understand better." The humans looked at each other in surprise, then nodded. The smaller one, a female named Kelly, positioned herself while the larger one, Ben, prepared to attack. "Watch how I use his momentum," Kelly explained. I'm not fighting against his force, I'm adding my force to his in a different direction. Ben charged forward. Kelly grabbed his arm, turned her body, and with a smooth motion sent Ben flying over her hip to land on the padded floor. Would you like to try? Kelly asked Corax to his surprise. I would damage you, Corax replied, gesturing to his much larger armored body. Not if you follow instructions carefully, Kelly said. Sam can be your partner. He's trained in falling safely. Sam nodded his agreement, though he looked slightly nervous. For the next hour, Corax carefully practiced the basic movements of judo with Sam and the other humans. His injured shoulder limited some motions, but he began to understand the principles. It was completely different from Zentari combat techniques, which relied on overwhelming force and natural weapons. When they finished, Corax felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He had learned something entirely new, something his species had never considered valuable. Thank you for teaching me, he said to the humans. This has been enlightening. That evening, Corax received a message from the Zentari High Command. They had reviewed his report and requested more information about human combat techniques and physical capabilities. They were especially interested in how these techniques might be adapted for Zentari use. As Corax composed his response, he realized something important was happening. His defeat, painful as it had been, was opening a new chapter in Zentari-human relations. Instead of dismissing humans as physically inferior, his people were beginning to recognize them as different but worthy of study and respect. A ping from his communication device interrupted his thoughts. It was an invitation from Jack Miller to join a small gathering the next day, a cultural exchange where representatives from different species would share aspects of their homeworlds. The message ended with, "No combat required, just conversation." Corax found himself looking forward to it. He had come to the station believing he understood humans. Now he realized he had only begun to learn about this surprising species. They were physically weaker than Zentari in many ways, but their adaptability, their diverse approaches to problems, and their willingness to learn from defeat made them formidable in ways he had never anticipated. Perhaps, Corax thought, physical strength was not the only kind of strength that mattered in the universe. Perhaps there was something valuable in the human approach of adapting to challenges, rather than simply overpowering them. He sent a reply accepting Jack's invitation. Then he returned to his report, determined to help his people understand what he was only now beginning to grasp himself. 2 weeks had passed since the combat between Corax and Jack. The Zentari-human diplomatic talks had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of the formal, cautious exchanges originally planned, the two species were engaged in enthusiastic sharing of knowledge and culture. Corax entered the main conference room of Stellar Alliance Station 7. His shoulder had healed well, though Dr. Shepard had warned him to avoid extreme stress on the joint for another week. The room was arranged differently. Today, instead of the usual formal seating, there were displays showing aspects of both human and Zentari homeworlds. Ambassador Corax, welcome, Diana Lewis greeted him. What do you think of our cultural exchange setup? Corax looked around the room, with approval. It is excellent. Much better than our original agenda of trade discussions and territory negotiations. Diana smiled. Sometimes it takes an unexpected event to break through established patterns. They both knew she was referring to the combat and its aftermath. What had begun as a challenge based on pride had transformed into an opportunity for genuine understanding. Jack Miller approached, carrying a tray of food items. Corax, I've been working with your nutrition specialists to create Earth foods that are safe for Zentari consumption. Would you like to try some? Corax examined the offerings with his 4 eyes. Zentari and humans had different biochemistry. Many human foods contained compounds toxic to Zentari, and vice versa. But Jack had clearly gone to considerable effort to create modified versions. I would be honored, Corax said, carefully taking an item that resembled a small cake. As he ate, he noticed other members of both delegations mingling comfortably. Several humans were examining a holographic display of the Zentari homeworld, asking questions about its harsh environment. Meanwhile, Zentari diplomats were watching videos of human athletic competitions with great interest. Your world shaped your species very differently than ours shaped us, Corax observed to Jack. High gravity, aggressive predators, extreme temperature, variations. They all pushed Zentari evolution toward physical power and natural armor. Jack nodded. While Earth's varied environments and changing conditions favored adaptability and endurance over specialized strength. Different paths to survival, Corax said. Both valid. This was a significant shift in his thinking. Before coming to the station, Corax had believed Zentari physical superiority made them better than humans, not just different. His defeat had forced him to reconsider that belief. A commotion near the door drew their attention. A group of high-ranking officials had entered the room. Among them was Admiral Pete Barnes of the Stellar Alliance Fleet and the Zentari High Commander Zarak. Corax straightened in surprise. The High Commander rarely left the Zentari homeworld. His presence here indicated the importance the Zentari government now placed on relations with humans. It seems our little combat demonstration caught the attention of leadership on both sides, Jack murmured. Diana hurried over to greet the officials. There were formal introductions and diplomatic exchanges. Corax watched as humans and Zentari leaders spoke with unexpected warmth. Later, High Commander Zarak approached Corax privately. Your reports have been most enlightening, Ambassador. Corax bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, High Commander. I have tried to convey my new understanding of humans accurately. You have succeeded, Zarak replied. The High Command was initially disturbed by your defeat, but your analysis of human capabilities has opened our eyes to possibilities we had not considered. What possibilities, High Commander? Zarak gestured toward the humans in the room. Alliance. True alliance. Not just formal diplomatic relations. The Zentari have always relied on physical power for defense and advancement. Humans have developed different strengths. Together we could be formidable. Corax was stunned. The Zentari had always been reluctant to form close alliances, believing other species had little to offer them. This was a historic shift in policy. The Alliance fleet has proposed joint training exercises, Zarak continued. Zentari strength combined with human adaptability and tactical thinking. Admiral Barnes believes our species could learn much from each other. Across the room, Corax saw Jack in conversation with Admiral Barnes. The human caught his eye and nodded slightly. There will be a formal announcement tomorrow, Zarak said. A new era of cooperation between our species. The next day, representatives from throughout the Stellar Alliance gathered in the station's largest meeting hall. Humans and Zentari stood side by side on the main platform. Admiral Barnes spoke, first outlining the new partnership between the two species. Then High Commander Zarak addressed the audience. For generations, the Zentari have pursued physical perfection, Zarak said. We modified our bodies to be stronger, more durable, better suited for survival in harsh conditions. We believed this made us superior to species that did not share these traits. The room was silent, everyone listening intently. Recent events have shown us the limitations of this perspective, Zarak continued. Physical strength is valuable, but it is not the only form of strength. Humans have demonstrated that adaptability, endurance, and tactical thinking can overcome seemingly insurmountable physical advantages. Zarak turned to look at Jack and Corax. A single combat between two individuals has led to a new understanding between our species. Sometimes defeat can be more valuable than victory if it leads to greater wisdom. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Music from both Earth and the Zentari homeworld played. People from different species mingled, sharing food, drinks, and conversation. The atmosphere was relaxed and hopeful. Corax found Jack near one of the viewports that looked out toward Earth. Your home looks peaceful from here, Corax said. Jack smiled. Appearances can be deceiving. Earth has its challenges and conflicts, like any world. As does my home, Corax agreed. Perhaps that is another thing our species have in common. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking at the blue-green planet. Do you regret challenging me to combat? Jack asked. Corax considered the question. The defeat was painful, both physically and to my pride, but the outcome has been greater understanding and a historic alliance. No, I do not regret it. Nor do I, Jack said. Though Diana still thinks I was crazy to accept your challenge. She may be right, Corax said with a click of his mandibles that Jack now recognized as laughter. But sometimes crazy actions lead to the best results. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Corax reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He had come to the station believing he understood his place in the galaxy, a representative of a physically superior species with little to learn from others. Now he stood as a bridge between two very different worlds, helping to forge an alliance that could benefit both. His defeat had become a victory of a different kind. Not a victory of strength over weakness, but of understanding over ignorance. The title of his report to the High Command seemed more meaningful now. Challenged a human to a fight. I'm writing this from the hospital. Those words had begun a transformation not just for him, but for both their species. Sometimes, Corax thought, the most important battles are the ones you lose.